Liam, and this is my hobby room. Last time we took a look at an introduction to airbrushing. It was a very surface glance on potential startup costs, basic information, and things that I wish someone had told me before I started. If you missed that segment, I'll link to it in the description down below. Today on Liam's Hobby Room, we're going to take a look at the painting process itself, and I'll walk you through it step by step, and you can decide whether or not this aspect of the hobby is right for you. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Let's get to it. So first of all, we're going to talk about your painting area. We want to make sure that this area is kept as clean as possible so everything you need is at hand and you don't have to waste time looking for things while paint is drying in your airbrush. Make sure you have proper ventilation. You want to make sure you have something that can move all the fumes from your painting station and get that stuff out of your room. Get it outside or whatever, just somewhere away from your lungs. Secondly, you want to make sure you have a respirator of some kind. This is a dual cartridge respirator that you can get online or in hardware stores and some hobby shops. This is gonna help you breathe and keep you safe while you're painting. So get one of these. While it doesn't have to look exactly like this, it does have to be able to filter both fumes and particulates because you're gonna be atomizing a lot of paint and you're gonna have a lot of fumes up in your hemisphere. So while your spray booth is gonna do most of the heavy lifting, why take a chance? It's your health. Let's keep you alive for just a little bit longer. So if you've watched any of my painting footage, you might notice that I have a spray booth that I'm spraying into. Spray booths are just a unit that plugs into the wall that sucks air and fumes out from your painting area and spits it out the back. So what you can do is put some filter paper or filter foam or something in there and you can suck all those fumes out. Some of the smell will remain because the paint will be in your filter. You can build your own spray booth or you can buy one from Pache or whatever company makes spray booths. I'll put a link down below to the spray booth that I have and also a link to a fairly well-known gunplay YouTuber that made his own spray booth, and lots of people do. It's really not that hard, you just have to get the right stuff. So while I'm painting, I use a mixture of alligator clips and shish kebab sticks with a bit of sticky tack on the end to hold my parts while I'm maneuvering them around my airbrush. So if you're using clamps or using sticks, doesn't really matter. Just make sure you get something that you can use to hold away from you while you're painting. Otherwise you're gonna get paint all over your hands or all over your gloves or whatever. Now before we begin, you might have heard that some people clean their models before they start painting. So is cleaning your model really necessary? Not always. Modern mold releases are pretty good and you won't have a lot of that oily residue left on your kit before you start painting just out of the manufacturer, but it does depend on the manufacturer. I personally haven't had any problems with this pretty much ever. You do sometimes transfer a lot of oils onto your kits if you're handling them a lot before you start painting. That might make it hard for paint to stick. Again, I have never had any problems with that. The only times that I've actually cleaned my model before painting with like a toothbrush and some warm water and soap is if I've done a lot of puttying and sanding and I've kicked up a lot of particulates all over the place. That's one instance where you might want to give your model a nice in-depth clean just so you don't end up painting all that stuff onto your kit, but that's something to consider. So when you've disassembled your kit and you've got it ready to start painting, you might want to prime or surface your kit. And I'm going to explain what both of those are right now. So primer primes the surfaces for painting, I know, right? And gives the paint something to bite onto, with the added effect of enhanced paint adhesion, surface cohesion, and in some cases color, tint, shade, and tone. The three most common colors for primer are white, gray, and black. White primer will make your colors very, very bright, while gray primer gives your colors a neutral undertone. Now counter to both of those, black primer will make your colors quite dark. As with most aspects of just color selection, this is a personal preference thing unless you're going for a very specific effect. Surfacer is a type of primer, and it helps fill inconsistencies in your plastic like minor scratches and divots. Those can all be masked with a good coat of surfacer. 500 grit surfacer will be much thicker than 1500 grit surfacer, and once it cures, you can sand it down and then get ready to prime it, and all those minor inconsistencies should be fixed unless it's too deep for the surfacer and you actually need to use putty. In this case, after you sanded down all your surfacer, you would want to give it a wash with some warm water and soap and a little toothbrush to scrub around just to get all that dust off of there. Spray an even coat of thin primer. Remember that if your paint is speckling, it means you'll need some more thinner. If it's running, you've used too much. If you add some to your cup, be sure to percolate the mixture in your color cup by just putting your thumb over the tip of your brush and slowly pulling back on the trigger. Since your air has nowhere to go, it will flow back into the color cup and the moving air bubbles will remix it for you. If this is your first time airbrushing, you may notice just how quickly the paint dries after being atomized by your brush. This can be extended or shortened with different types of thinners for effect, but we'll save that for another time because it's not directly pertinent. After this, set your primed parts aside and clean your airbrush. This doesn't have to be a very thorough cleaning, we'll do that at the end of our session. You just want to make sure that you clean the color cup and nozzle so none of that paint is mixing with any new paint that's coming in and obscuring the colors that you want to use. Now we're ready to paint. This is my absolute favorite part of building models. I love painting, it is so much fun, and it's really satisfying when you get the exact effect that you wanted. And because you're starting to airbrush, that's going to become more and more common, and you're only going to have more and more control, and hopefully more satisfaction with what you've been making. First, a few basics about painting. Your colors, along with the primer you put down before it, will build upon one another to create tones and shades. Now you can spray your paint evenly over the whole piece. I do that sometimes, but my preferred method is actually start in the center and paint as if I'm highlighting a piece. In slow concentric circles, I work my way to the outside to make it look like the paint is fading into the color of the base coat. Sometimes I mess this up, and if your paint isn't thin just right, you're going to notice speckling around the edges and it's going to look off. But just be patient. If you need to rethin your paint, add a little bit more thinner and percolate and get back to it. Make sure to do a few test sprays before you just go right to your part, or you might do more harm than good. So be careful not to overfill your color cup. If you percolate while it's too full, you're going to start bubbling paint all over the place, and you'll spend a lot of time cleaning the outside of your airbrush with thinner when you could be painting. If you like, you can use the airbrush's cap while you're painting until you get a good feel of how the airbrush moves in your hands, but then again, you might just like to use the cap anyways. That's totally fine. Lots of painters say that multiple thin coats is better than one thick coat, and they're absolutely right. Listen to those people. This is because a thick coat can obscure your detail. The paint on the bottom of that thick coat might stick and bite to the plastic, but the sheer amount of paint you've piled on top with that thick coat is going to slide around and roll over some of the detail, and it's going to cure like a slope over things that are supposed to have an angle to it. So to avoid paint running and pooling, even though your paint's thin correctly, spray in multiple thin coats. Thinner coats will build on top of each other. So say that you've primed your part in black and you're spraying it in red, and your thin coat is just making it kind of look brown. That's okay. Work up that thin coat gently over time, and that's going to become a really, really nice red, and it will fade right into the black, and it's going to look beautiful. But yes, let the color build on itself. You can use masking tape to mask off areas that are going to require a different color of paint. I really hate masking because it's so tedious, but if you take the time and do it properly, the results will speak for themselves. We'll cover masking in a different video because it's not directly pertinent to this video. Now, once your parts are fully painted, you can set them aside to dry and cure. Fully curing, depending on your solvent, can take up to 2 days, but your paint will be workable very quickly after being sprayed out of your airbrush. As I said before, you'll notice how quickly it dries after being atomized. So long as your parts are dry, you'll be fine to continue painting with the same or a weaker solvent. I just quickly want to go over some helpful things that may make your painting or airbrush experience a little less painful. This is a pipette. You can get all different types of pipettes. It doesn't really matter. It's made out of polyethylene, so paint really doesn't stick to it, and thinner doesn't really melt it. It will eventually, one day, maybe, I don't know. So this thing is pretty great. Actually, this pipette I've had for about 7 years, and it's still holding up. This is my lucky pipette. I lost it once and I was heartbroken, and I didn't paint for a week until I found it again. This is a Vallejo pipette. You can see it's gradiated here with measurements. I have never used them. I don't really care. I eyeball all my thinning. The other thing that you should probably pick up is a stir stick. This one's a little bit dirty. Ooh, naughty Liam. Some people use a toothpick. Some people use plastic. There's nothing wrong with plastic, though I would avoid using toothpicks and wood to stir your solvent-based paints just because it'll eat the wood, and eventually you're gonna get fibers in your airbrush, and that's, you know, that's bad news. Nobody wants that. This is a metal one from TOPCOAT. And yeah, take care of your tools. Clean them, because this is metal. You don't need to throw this out. It's stainless steel. Just clean it and use it again. I've had this for about 13 years now, and it's pretty great. It's pretty great. It's a little bent, but it's okay. Just bend it back into shape. And then Q-tips. Q-tips are another thing that you should get. Though the Q-tip brand, I find they tend to fray a lot. So if you're doing a lot of cleaning inside your brush with them, I don't know, that's up to you. I've had fibers get loose in there, and it's kind of a pain in the ass. Get some hobby Q-tips or beauty Q-tips. They're wound a lot tighter. I've talked about them before. You can get dual-ended ones. You can get sharp ones. These are ones from Vallejo. And then, you know, regular, sorry, I keep calling them Q-tips. These are cotton swabs. I think I got these from, oh yeah, Miniso. Miniso's great. So now that your painting is mostly done, we come to a little crossroads. Here I usually stop and I hand paint some details. I'll do some panel lining, I'll put some decals down and do my weathering. And then I'm ready for clear coating and everything after that. At this stage, there's a few things you can do, but because this video is just about airbrushing, we're gonna skip over that for now, but each of those topics is a whole wormhole of information, so we're gonna cover that stuff in another video. Now you can get TOPCOAT from any of the major paint brands in spray cans and in bottles as well. Because you're already airbrushing, I'll recommend you just use the bottles. You're already sitting there. That way you can mix it yourself if you need it to be thinner or thicker. Now firstly, I partially assemble my kit. This is because I like to paint everything in segments. It saves a little bit of time from painting each individual part, but if you're being that meticulous, it's probably because you have a reason to be that meticulous. I usually don't. I'll paint the parts in my TOPCOAT. I might bend a joint or something and then go back and fill in that part that I missed. So now it's time to choose what kind of finish you'd like your kit to have. You can choose from gloss, semi-gloss, or matte. If you're airbrushing this isn't a multiple choice, it's a scale. You can select how glossy or how matte or how semi-glossy. Of course, these paint skills are transferable to build any model kit, but if you're building a Gunpla kit and you're looking at the instruction manual and you like the finish that picture has, almost every single Gunpla instruction manual is painted with a semi-gloss. Almost every single one, I promise you. There are ways to make your gloss super glossy and your matte coats super matte, but that has to do with two different types of thinner, and we'll talk about that another time. For this project, I'll be going with a matte finish. This is usually what I use for most Gunpla, so to give my kit a really nice matte finish, I'm first going to give it a gloss finish. What? You heard me. Some individual paint pots have a gloss finish and some individual paint pots have a matte finish. Sometimes I mix and match these and I get certain areas that are glossy and certain parts that are matte. Either way, I'm usually using water slide decals, which are inherently glossy, and a variety of different materials to weather the kit. So what I'm gonna do is paint the whole thing in a gloss coat. So we're unifying all the kit surfaces with the hyper glossy water slide decals that have already gone down. So even if you put a matte coat down over top of your decals, they'll still have a bit of a sheen. This kind of mitigates that a little bit. It's not perfect, but I find that this really works for me. So I paint the whole thing with a gloss coat, and once that's dried up, I take my matte coat and I do the whole thing again in a matte coat. So now you can set your parts aside and let them cure while you clean your airbrush. Now it's time to clean up. This is a really good habit building exercise. So I normally do a weekly clean of my airbrush. That depends on how much I've been painting. So if I don't paint very much that week, I won't do the full clean, but if I do paint a lot, I might do it twice a week. So a full clean is where you completely disassemble your airbrush and get some thinner in there and really clean and really scrub everything down. The general rule of thumb is if your piece is removable, then it should be cleaned, because paint can get into pretty much any crevice. So when you go to disassemble your brush, open up your airbrush's instruction manual. They usually have your brush anatomy broken down right there, and it'll tell you what parts come off and what don't, what pieces to pay special attention to so you don't accidentally lose them. There is a spring in there, so make sure to use the same solvent or stronger that you use to paint your primer and your painting and all that stuff, because that's gonna break down all the paint inside your brush and get it out of there. Get it out of there, get it out of there, get out. So for instance, this time I'm using lacquer thinner. I have my dual cartridge respirator on, not right now, but in this clip I have my dual cartridge respirator on because I don't want to die, and I have my spray booth going, and my spray booth is sucking out all those fumes, and my respirator is saving me from an early grave. And get in there with the thinner and really wipe down all the surfaces. Unscrew your brush, make sure to take a look in your trigger mechanism. This doesn't have to be done every time. A basic clean really just involves filling your color cup, percolating, unscrewing the needle chuck and moving your needle back a bit, percolating again, making sure to get all that thinner moving out and spraying out of your nozzle. When you're finishing your painting session and you're doing your end of session clean, move your needle back so the thinner can blast all of the dried paint and any bits that may have stuck to the inside of your nozzle out of it, because you want to get that all out before it dries and cures inside your brush. So as I was making this video, I was painting up my high-grade Gundam HAJIROBOSHI, and I'm going to show you that now, just to show you the results of what I was doing while I was making this. Oh, I almost forgot. If you'd like to get into painting and you're looking for tools and supplies, visit bcshaver.com. If you're getting paint, you can get 20% off all hobby paints, all of them, with the code PAINT20. There's airbrushes, there's airbrush compressors, there's airbrush parts. There's so much stuff there. Check out the tools and supplies area, and I promise you'll find something that will help you out. Anyways, now I'm done. I'll see you guys next time with another review. Bye-bye.